When working on the Till Dawn album, did you use the original master tapes or copies?
Right, Till Dawn. What we did, as far as I can certainly remember, with most of it, was that we made copies. So what we did was we took certain tracks and we took them off the originals and dumped them across, as you call it, onto new tapes. And I know that for a fact because somewhere somebody must have the original Till Dawn master tapes, original Till Dawn being our versions, if you like, with the stickers from the studio, which was the Wool Hall, which is where we did them. And we moved them across. As far as I can remember, there wasn't a single tape. I mean, there was no point in actually using the originals because we were remixing and overdubbing and there wasn't enough tracks left on. So we would have to. I mean, the thing is, that's what you make safety copies and you whip everything across to them. So that's how we worked.
Sorry, Ben.
On this album you state that Bill Legend re-recorded the drums. Why?
Why? Because he wanted to. Because he said himself that his drumming was crap sometimes and Mark put him under a lot of pressure in the studios. Because the thing is that what Bill used to tell us was that Mark was very impatient in the studios. So he wanted everybody else's stuff done very quickly. So it'd be like Bill would be doing a drum roll, or he'd be going down across or something, and he'd say, "Oh, Mark, can I do that?" And Mark would say, "No, that's great, Bill. That'll do." And so Bill felt that it was an opportunity for him to do the drums the way he really wanted to do them. So we let him do it. The other thing about it was we let him do it was because we had this idea of double tracking. And we double-tracked a lot of his drums to give him that. I don't know whether it was the Revolution remix, but it had a real ballsy, crashing drum. And that's because we double-tracked. We had the original, and Bill did them all over again, which I hasten to add, he had a lot of problems with.
Couldn't keep up with
He
them.
couldn't keep up with them. He couldn't keep up with double-tracking. But it was Bill's idea.
And also, there was a couple of tracks that he didn't play drums on,
Yeah.
which he wanted to do.
He was really
on.
peed off because he left halfway through the album. And so that's where David Lutton came in, and Bill always used to say, "Oh, I would like to have done the drums on that." So we gave him the opportunity.
Okay. It is alleged you recorded the new drums over the top of the original recording. If this is true, what were your reasons?
We didn't. As I've just explained, Bill wanted to do them. Bill wanted to do them again, so he was left enough tracks to do them again. And where we wanted to actually double track, he double tracked. But we never erased the originals.
Okay. If you did produce new masters, where are the originals?
One would assume Peter Todd's got them.
Original one-touch masters?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, when Peter couldn't. When Peter and everybody else that was involved in that couldn't do anything with us still being involved, they took everything away.
Can you tell us why some of the master tapes that you had tracks cut out and the boxes they were in, which had Mark's handwriting on, were overwritten?
Had tracks cut out? I don't understand the question, to be honest. I read this earlier. I don't understand what you mean by cut out. Whose question was it?
Mine.
Right. What do you
the
mean?
master tapes had 12 tracks on it.
Yeah.
The tracks you wanted were cut out of that master tape. So the master tape originally had 12 tracks. You then reduced that to about 6 tracks, and then you overwrote on the box. Someone overwrote details on the box.
When you say the tapes, do you mean the multi-tracks or do you mean the mix-downs? Do you mean the big clumping studio tapes or do you mean the thin mix-down?
Well, some of those were masters. Some of the quarter-inch were masters because they were never put on the 2-inch master tapes. Because the albums, the MI stuff, was on 2-inch.
No. Correction. Okay. Explanation here. The masters are the mixed down quarter-inch, right? The 2-inch is what you simply work with in the studio. So the 2-inch would have been, what you do is you've got a 2-inch tape, everybody lays the tracks down, and
That's
then
the first copy.
the
original.
So that's like the original. That's where what you go is you get 2-inch, or it's half-inch tape nowadays with digital. But you've got a 2-inch tape which has got 24 tracks on it. Okay. Each one of those tracks, if you like, is, I mean, think of it as a motorway. Each one of those tracks a car drives along. Okay. So you've got 24 tracks where you lay all your stuff down, and then from that, when you master, what you do is you mix down from the 2-inch tape all the tracks of those 24 that you want on your final mix, and then mix down onto a 1/4 inch. Okay. Now, what we might have done was we might have recorded 14 or 15 tracks, but then decided that only 7 of the tracks were going to be used. So what you would do is you would edit, you would cut out to make a final master where you join all your tracks together when you compile them into the album order. What you do is you have your piece of tape, splice it, put your sticky on there, put your next track on or your leader time in, and then go to your next track.
Yeah, but the criticism is that you actually cut up the tapes that Marc had produced.
No, bollocks. We certainly never did, and I defy anybody to say we did. We did not.
Well, I defy you because I've seen it.
No.
Well,
No.
What is it
Specifically?
Well, it just so happens that I brought this along.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a master tape.
No, that's a monitor mixer's tape. But anyway, whatever.
Well, okay, but it's an original tape from Marc's era.
Yeah.
And what's happened there is there's been...
And can I tell you something else, George?
Yeah.
That's not her handwriting.
Well, someone's written it, but what you've got
Sorry,
there...
come here, give it back. George, that's not our handwriting.
Yeah, but...
These tapes have been out of our control. Sorry.
Hold on. Yeah, sorry, you were saying, George.
So on there you had, I don't know, 12 tracks or something that Marc recorded in that order. What's happened to that tape is that 6 of those tracks have been taken out and put on your Rarities Volume 2. Now why would anyone else do that?
But what's wrong with I mean, if somebody's done that, I don't understand.
It also says copy.
It's
at the
copy.
top. It's a copy
I mean,
tape.
what you asked me was the master tapes, and I'm telling you categorically now that we never cut up a master tape.
Quite
we never
possible
cut
that
up.
We had the original.
I mean, the original is probably somewhere else. But what I'm telling you categorically is the original masters. We never cut any original masters up. That's
Okay,
a
but-
question.
but
You've got it. Listen, George. Your questions have got to be precise. There's 2 things I'll say here. That is not our handwriting. Now, I would assume. I'll tell you what I am going to assume here. I wouldn't mind betting this looks to me like Cole's writing. Now, as you know, earlier on I told you, right at the top of this, that Colm had the Reebok machine, okay, and he downloaded things onto DAT, and then he compiled things. So what is more than likely is as Colm was going through these, he would have been doing everything onto DAT, but it is also possible that he spliced, as he made up the rarities listing, he might have spliced the tape into what then became a master tape. Do you follow? This is, so you've got to understand the way it works. But what I'm telling you categorically is we never ever cut up one of Marc's original master tapes.
But to all intents and purposes, that is an original tape that Marc had, that Marc worked on, and therefore that's a historical document. What's happened to that is that has been now...
I'm sorry, George. No, I'm not going to take this from you. No way. You cannot. There is no way that you could produce this. There's no way the rarities could have been produced without you having to move tapes across. If that had been an absolute...
But if you do a copy, if you get a brand new
but that's
spool
a copy.
and copy... Well, yeah, but this is an original copy. This was done in 73 or whatever. Okay, so it's a historical document that Marc worked on. What's happened now is that this has been altered and has had writing put on it.
No. Well, the writing I'm not taking responsibility for, but the fact is you are taking it to the absolute extreme. You know, you've got to think about the way you produce stuff. And
Yeah,
the
but
thing is that
what's wrong with taking... No, nothing wrong with you using the tracks, what's wrong with taking a copy of that and then splicing and doing whatever you want with it?
But
Why
that
actually cut up the original tape?
But that is a
So
copy.
there's another
That
copy
is the
around.
copy.
There's another copy around. What I'm saying to you is that copies would very likely always, whether it's a copy that we made in 1985 or whether it's a copy that was made in 1973, is immaterial. The fact is, it is a copy. Don't you think Mark did that? Don't you think that's what Mark used to do as well?
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
that's,
listen,
how,
George,
that's how
listen.
you record things.
Yeah.
I fully accept that. What I'm saying is that
No.
when Mark died,
Mm.
that
No.
stuff should have been kept in its original state.
No, I
It's
don't
like
agree.
taking someone's book and then when you republish it, going through and making corrections because the author got it wrong. Well, fair enough, but you don't go and mess around with that author because then you've lost part of that history.
No, I don't agree with you.
I mean, you can photocopy it and then write on the photocopy.
I think what would have been not allowable would have been, and you see, again, the question you asked me was, did we mess about with any of the original masters? And the answer is no, we didn't. They are copies. It might have been, George, that Mark used to do 5 or 6 copies.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah? Okay, so you're telling me, and think about it, you're telling me that all 6 of those that you can't do anything with. We were running a record company. The tracks were there. The copies were there. You know, you don't have time to faff about re-recording and re-recording and re-recording, apart from the fact that if you think about it, every time you re-record you lose a very small, but you lose quality. And the thing is that the original tapes wouldn't have been touched, but copies, as far as I'm concerned, copies are... I mean, the thing is, that copy there might have been a splice down that Mark had done himself. The thing is, you're taking history, George, to an absolute extreme, which I can't even begin to get my head around. If we had taken...
There's nothing wrong with taking a copy of that tape and doing whatever you want with it, rather than cutting up that tape.
No, I don't agree with you. I just simply do not agree with where you're coming from. I just don't agree with you. If for instance, if we'd taken the Slider album, the original 1/4-inch master, and said, let's cut it up and do the Slider in a different order, then... But we would never do that. I don't think you've got any right in this world, George, to have a go at us about that. I mean, if that's the worst you can come up with...
No, I think that's a very valid point.
I don't think it is at all. I think
that's
it's a
something
total
that's original from Mark's era has been changed by you.
No, I don't agree
How
with
do you know that it's been changed by John and Shan and not
It
somebody
was
else?
changed
I suspect
for the recording of Rarities 2.
I would say that it was changed for the recording of Rarities 2, because it says Rarities 2 on there, and I suspect that what happened is Colm had the tapes. Colm would have been listening through everything, and he probably thought, oh, Liquid Gang, good version for Rarities 2. So he would have indicated Rarities 2. Okay. And then, what he would have done was, from this, he would have had to have created a master for us. So what he would then, I presume, have done with the Reebok machine is actually splice, take the tracks off there, cut. You don't cut the physical tape, you just cut the leader. Come to think of it, George, if it was that fucking important, and get the Rarities 2 tape and splice it back in. It's not like something's lost forever, George.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's lost.
Right, well in
I'm
that
saying
case,
that the
don't fuck
original
about
is-
with, for me, something that is so inconsequential, I can't believe you're even doing it.
But it's not
Because-
inconsequential for
Well-
historians.
George,
It's true.
well, I think it's bollocks.
Because that's the whole essence of
I mean,
history,
the
studying
way
history,
the
is
way
go
to
back
deal
the
with that,
originality.
the way to deal with that is to find the Rarities 2
Or indeed
1/4-inch
the original
or the
of
original
this.
rough mixes, and you'll find the original rough mixes will have everything on there, because again, it's a copy. But even if it isn't, you know, all you do is you go to the Rarities 2 master that we all know Peter Todd's got, and you say to him, Peter, for historical purposes, I want Liquid Gang, Down Home Lady, Superbad, and yeah, I can never say it, and just put them back in, and there you are, no damage done.
Yeah, unless Peter sold them.
Yeah, but that is not my problem.
No, but when you had control of the tapes, you changed the.
When I
the
had
essence
control
of
of the tapes, George, I did what was right, and I did what I thought was right. And to be honest with you, the idea that in 20 or 30 or 40 years historians would want that spliced tape back in its original form is an absolute nonsense. I'm sorry, mate. Like, absolute bloody nonsense. Well, disagree by all means. I mean, that's what democracy's all about. But I'm telling you that I think.
But that's why people want to get back to the original version of the Bible through the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, but
because the versions that came afterwards have slowly started to change, and it's changed the meaning of it.
yeah, but George, but when they change it forever. What we have done there is not change anything forever.
Changed it temporarily.
We changed it temporarily. Anybody, if I, I mean, the thing is, it's great with hindsight, but when that was done, if you seriously think, I'm going to think, hold on, in several years, somebody's going to look at this box and they're going to want those tracks back.
We never imagined that we were going to get rid of these tapes.
Well, that's something else. I mean, to be honest with you, we never thought we were ever not going to have the tapes. But I honestly think, George, that is such a, honestly, mate, I've known you for, I think that is the most stupid thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry. It is so stupid, it's banal. Because all you've got to do is find the rarities too and slip them back in.
Any comments, Zach?
It's not like we've erased something forever.
Or do we want to pause it for a bit while people think?
No, it's all right. Carry on. I don't see
I
the
was
problem.
just thinking of Jim with his transcribing.
No problem.
No, honestly, I'm sorry.
Condense this down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just don't edit out my points.
No, certainly not.
And I expect the points to be in there. George, honestly.
I think to some extent that's the problem with the historian's point of view, where a historian
wants originality.
But there's a master of that somewhere, isn't there?
Yes.
They may or may not be.
No, what I was trying to say was that the fact that the problem with historians is they tend to sort of want to put things in glass cases and just look at them, whereas on the other hand, I mean, fans wanted new CDs, they wanted new LPs, they wanted to be able to...
All I'm saying is that there's one step missing in all this, which is you take a tape which has got Mark's writing on it, and therefore it's a piece of history, and you just make a copy and do whatever you want with the copy, and then you keep that intact. That's all. That was my criticism. Yeah. Not you take something like this and you start cutting bits out, making something else, which was the Rarities 2 was a perfectly valid album, nothing wrong with that, and I agree with the selection of the tracks.
But also the quality of it was
would have been minimal. You transfer it from one tape to the other.
Yes, I know, but we were doing CDs, George. CDs, we were aiming for as high as we could, and to be honest with you, it never ever entered. If we had been, I could understand you being angry if we had spliced an original master, right? If we had physically defaced an original master, I could understand you 100%. You're talking about a copy here, and you're not even talking about it being lost forever. If you're that worried about it, ask Peter Todd if he can find the Rarities Masters, which I'm sure he can, splice it back in. You would never know the difference then.
I agree, but what we're saying is that the more that the time goes on, the more difficult that process is going to be.
Yes, but with all due respect...
Because already now, I don't know if Peter's got the other tape.
Well, with all due respect, that is not my problem.
No, what I was criticising there was your working method in that, and I think this is the same point that Tony Visconti made, in that if you're going to do anything with the tape, you make a copy and then you do whatever you want with the copy. You don't mess around with the original.
Yeah, well, we'll get on to Tony Visconti in a minute.
in preserving these for rarities.
Oh yeah, but you were saying in other ones sort of.
Yeah, no, I'm about Mark's writing being defaced.
Indicative of no,
George.
That they've been messed around with.
No.
But Peter Todd is a commercial producer who has had those tapes since 1992.
And he's got a lot of people around him who are messing about with those tapes. 93.
Anything could have happened in 6 years. It's a long time.
It's a long time, George.
Has it been that long?
And I defy you, George, as well.
Yeah.
If anybody suggests to Shan and I that we weren't Bolan fans, which I know you're not saying, but only non-Bolan fans would deface things in such a way, and we would never do that. If you think of the manuscripts and the poetry and all the bits that we kept lovingly in their entirety, you've been to our place and you've seen the way our stuff is in plastic.
So what you're saying is
it hasn't been
to deface something and not others.
Hold on a minute. Oh, it's funny, I wondered if he'd done it in pencil. I don't think, to be honest with you as well, if you look at that, what does he defend? If you're telling me that, I mean, what he's written on the rarities is so far removed away from what Mark or anybody's written down there that I don't even think it. I think again it's a nonsense. It's so far away.
But that's part of history too.
Yeah, when we made the rarities things. Very good point. That is a good point.
I could make history as well. I could now sign it saying George Rabb owned this, and that would be part of history. Still be wrong.
George. You see, the other thing is you've got to think about. You see then you go back to the fact that when we had everything, we couldn't see a time when we wouldn't have everything. Okay. And if for 1 minute, I mean, I'll tell you something else. Do you think we would be so stupid as to do things like this, letting it go, and think that several years later it was going to come back and smack us in the mouth as if, look what they did here? I saw nothing wrong in what we did. I still think you're wrong.
So can I just? You were just saying, and you're a bit about the primary source.
Yeah, even with the alterations, that's a primary source in its own right. And
To a historian.
To a historian.
Yeah, so what's the point?
Well, the point is, that's a copy. Obviously, the masters are untouched somewhere, and absence of, evidence isn't evidence of absence. They could quite be alive and well and whatever. So whether that copy has actually been altered in any way from the master, and the master is still in its entirety, that then holds itself in its own right as a primary source.
I mean, there's something
totally disconnected from.
It's an altered primary source.
No, you cannot alter a primary source, can you? It's part of its history.
No,
yes, but that is part of its history.
You see, George, I'm sorry.
It's like the Elgin marbles. Just because they repolished the Elgin marbles, that's part of it.
George, you're starting.
The graffiti in Auschwitz is part of the history.
A primary source within its own right from its alteration point.
And the thing is, George, as well.
Primary source.
Can I just say something else? It's a valid point, but let me say something else. You are starting, or you are in this vein, to me, being as bloody minded as Mark Patris and all the other purists who have completely wiped Shan and I out of history of Mark's career between 1977 and 1995 when they got their own fucking hands on everything. If you read anything that's out now, compilations, there is no mention of the period 1978 to 1993. You show me an Unchained, you show me a messing with the mystic. You show me anything that these bastards are bringing out. Sorry, I'm going.
Sanitise.
Any that these people are bringing out now, they have all wiped out the history of 78 to 93.
Well,
I mean, you're doing it. You're doing it now. I'm gobsmacked.
I'm not saying that what you did.
We are as much a part of.
Rarities 2 shouldn't have come out. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that
all we altered, George, all we did was lift tracks away. We didn't alter anything. Those tracks could easily have been, and can still be. If you're that worried about it, call Peter Todd and say, Peter, would you please, the 4 tracks that should have been on this, would you please reinsert them back into their proper sequence?
But my point is that you may not be able to do it. You may have sold that tape.
Well, if he sold, I'm sorry, then hang him, not me.
Because he bought a set. So if he is now fragmenting them,
that's not my problem.
That is his choice, surely. If he bought them as one lot.
Yeah, I mean that's a criticism for Peter as well, that he's now dispersing this huge collection.
Peter is, from what I can gather, it's going off all over the net and everywhere. That was not.
Going like that.
Yeah, but that was not what Peter said he was all about. If we had realised what was happening, then we might have tried to change the way things were, but we were backed into a corner.
Okay, well,
we were in a corner.
That's a different question.
But I honestly, no, I won't.
I think this would
I can't
a
accept
difference
it.
of opinion.
Okay.
Should we have another question then?
Yes, let's go.
Or did you have something to contribute?
No, there's quite enough been said about that. Why were all the writings and tapes you had not properly documented for future researchers? Instead, they were sold off to the highest bidder, dispersing a valuable archive.
Right, okay. Yeah, so I know who it is. we never documented them because, to be perfectly honest with you, we never had the time, and we never realised there was any particular point to. I keep telling you, when we were involved with, when we had all this stuff, we never dreamt in our lives that we would ever have to let go of it. And to be perfectly honest with you, we did not have the time to sit with every single tape that was ever and document it. George, if you had offered me 10 years ago, if you'd phoned me and said, John, I want to, can I finish?
Yeah.
If you want, I would like to come and document everything for purely from a historical point of view. I would like to come down and spend, God knows, George, you spent enough time with us. You've only had to ask, and I would have said, George, you go and do it, mate.
Well, I never even saw these, so I didn't know that until I saw Peter and what he had from it. I didn't know you had all these tapes.
But you did. You did, Jake. I'm sorry, George, you did, because you were in our garage. If you remember that beautifully big, airtight, lovely dry garage, you saw the stuff on the shelves. Don't you remember?
No. Honest.
You did. You saw them.
Because I was.
And they were all chronologically stacked on the shelving that we had built specially.
Can I just say something? Earlier you accepted that the fan club as such was not a money-making
correct
enterprise, that it was more of a break-even enterprise.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah.
So John and Shan were earning no income, wages from doing the fan club. Yeah, so they were earning their money elsewhere to pay the bills, to keep the roof over their head. So, in which case, then they did a lot for no payment.
They cut corners.
Well, yes, but then on the other hand, but that's what John's saying. That if other people had wanted to do work for nothing, the same as they were doing work for nothing, then other people could have helped, and we wouldn't have got in this situation.
I mean, George, honestly, the thing is, thanks for that feedback, but what I would say to you, George, is that if you'd come to me, or anybody had come and said to me, or in fact, ironically, that was kind of what Con was supposed to be doing, was sort of putting something in some order. What I didn't realise what he was doing was downloading everything onto DAT and then nicking it. But if you had come to me all those years ago and said, can I chronologically, I don't know how long you've been thinking about your book, but you only needed to say to us years ago, could I do this? And I would have welcomed you with open arms. If you wanted to take the time and effort to do it, what I'm telling you is, we did not have the time to think about that sort of thing. And neither, as I keep saying and reiterating and getting boring like an old record is, I never dreamt there would be a time when this material no longer belonged to us. In fact, we're going to be proven right in the fact that we should always have been the custodians of what we worked to get. Because since we were backed into a corner and had to let everything go, it seems that the whole fucking world has collapsed. Peter Todd never indicated to me ever that he was going to sell everything off. I only heard about this through somebody else, that he was doing stuff on the side. Can I just say one other thing? It wasn't a question of the highest bidder. We were in a partnership with Peter and several other people. Okay, Peter bought into our partnership. He bought into, because he was a producer, and because he had very, very good connections in the music business. He worked with top quality people. And Peter was introduced to us by a mutual acquaintance. He was an accountant in London. Peter was, he said, was a big Bolan fan, and he seemed to know what he was talking about. And he wanted to be a part of it all. We saw it as a way of moving forward with everything. Peter bought into the partnership with us, and then Peter approached us again and said, we cannot do anything with this material unless you and Shan are out of the scene. So Shan and I ended up being given a certain amount of money, and it was a lot of money. It was many thousands of pounds, and that softened the blow for us, because we were really, it was a chunk. If you think about it, it was 20 years of our lives. Suddenly we were nothing to do with anymore, George. And the thing is, Peter came to us and said, they will not negotiate with us while you and Shan are involved. And I took that as gospel, because I knew who the person was who had said this to Peter. And rather than get into a fight, and with everything else going on, we said, okay, end of the road. So he handed over the money, he took away the tapes. But at the time, in fairness to Peter, Peter might have now got to a stage where he can no longer afford to have all that money and capital tied up in the Marc Bolan tapes. You know, I can't speak for Peter because I don't know what he's doing and why he's doing it. But whatever the reason is, I'm not going to question it. It's up to him. They're his now. They're not yours. They're not any Bolan fans. They don't belong to anybody but Peter and his partners. I mean, that's a sad fact of life, George.
Yeah, the point that I was trying to make was that to be accurate as to what Mark recorded where and how he came to come up with a finished track or a finished single, all this is part of that archive. So for someone who's going to write a book, and that's where I was coming from,
right,
that's valuable research, and if it was documented in one place, you could go to it, even if it's just photocopies, you could work your way through. But that doesn't exist, because, I mean, the same thing happened with some of the poetry he had, and he's got some videotapes as well. They're all going left, right and centre. Yeah, for somebody to bring it all back and make sense of it is now virtually
impossible. The thing is, you're hanging it on me, and it's not my bag.
He passed it all on as one.
Yeah, and I think, quite honestly, I'm beginning to suspect that actually what you're doing, George, is this is out of frustration as a historian, that you've found that you can't put everything together the way you want because it is fragmented, but that is not my fault. By all means, lynch me for things that are my fault, but don't lynch me for things that are beyond my control. And in my opinion, that is beyond my control.
Well, okay, there's 2 points. There was a stage where you had everything, and you could have documented it. Then, okay, went to Peter, and he could have documented it. So there's a stage from both
why
sides.
Why don't you approach Peter now, before Peter sells all the tapes on the internet and everything, and say, Peter, before you do this, can I document everything? Go to him. You're talking to him. You're obviously involved in it with him. Talk to him. He's a reasonable man.
Yeah, how long are we going to do this one question for?
Well, don't worry. I mean, as long as it needs thrashing out, doesn't it? I'm sorry, but it's one of those.
Well, can we move on to the others and maybe come back to it?
It didn't go to the highest bidder. It didn't go to the highest bidder. As I said, our backs were up against the wall. We had no choice. And having said that, I didn't believe that we were making a wrong choice because we'd known Peter and we respected Peter. I still respect Peter.
But why did he want you out?
It wasn't him, it was somebody in Wizard who wanted us out. Because Jim, there is a lot of weird things going on with Mark's companies, and we got very close to finding out answers that people didn't want us to know. Right, so what they did was, it's all the do, it happens in life, You upset somebody in the government, MI5 are onto you. You set somebody in the Wizard companies, and all of a sudden the whisper is, somebody who's powerful enough to be able to negotiate licensing deals says to Peter Todd, yeah, we'll do these things with you, but not if the Bramleys are involved. I can't help that. There's nothing I can do about it.
Did you sell the tapes that were the property of EMI?
No. They were handed to Edsel in their complete, as they were delivered to us, they were delivered to Edsel.
Sound that element. Is it true, as claimed by Tony Visconti, that he was given master tapes to remix instead of safety copies?
Yes. Yes, it is true. And the reason we did that was, as we touched on earlier, when God calls and says, "Can I have tapes of these songs?" you deliver them to them. I wouldn't have been disrespectful to Tony as to do anything other than deliver the originals to him. And we had no way of making safety copies of them anyway, and if anybody was going to have facilities to do that, it was Tony. And one would assume that Tony took the original tapes and then dumped across what he wanted for the remixes. But I would not have insulted Tony by not giving him and he never asked us for the safety copies. He asked us for the tapes, so we delivered the tapes. His name's on them, they're as much his as anybody else's. Okay.
Are the Dandy Master tapes, which I assume you got from EMI, in the hands of Edsel?
Well, we delivered to Edsel the singles collections, Solid Gold, the slider through to Dandy in the Underworld, so Edsel must have the original Dandy Masters, yes.
Where are the original Billy Super Duper Masters, and who has them now?
Well, I would imagine, well, God knows now, but Peter Todd took them. Peter Todd took them.
How did the masters of the fan club recording T.Rex to See Live end up with NMC?
Well, that is an interesting story. There's another document that you'll see in a minute, which is my letter to NMC, which, if you want, I don't know if there's any way of making copies of this feed. Your scanner doesn't work at the moment, does it? That's a shame. Well, I'll make copies and send them on to you, so it'll be up to you. But I did write a 2-page letter to NMC, telling them what I thought of them for releasing the T.Rex to See Live album as trying to say it was Wheelie. I warned them that it was not Wheelie, and they told me that it was that Bill Legend and Mickey Finn went to them and said, "We've got this great project for you. We've got the original monitor mixes of Mark's gig at Wheelie with us," and they told, from what I can gather, they told NMC that they were the original Wheelie tapes, and all Bill and Mickey had done, and whoever they were in cahoots with, is that they had either taken the Japanese CD, because T.Rex came out in Japan as a CD as well, never here, or they took our vinyl and they made a copy of it and came out with a brilliant album, supposedly. But in fact it was our T.Rex to See album. And I actually said to the guy at NMC that not only had he been cooked totally and turned over, but if he bothered to listen, I asked if he'd listen to it, there's one stage where Mark says the acoustics in here are fantastic.
In here.
At
Wheelie.
Okay, at Wheelie. Now, anybody with only half of wit knows that Wheelie was open air, and if you listen to the T.Rex to See album, you'll hear Mark say, the acoustics are great in here, man. So, I rest my case. And it had nothing to do with us, but we still got the blame for it, and I don't understand that, because we were out of it.
Okay. Can you explain your reasons for releasing Till Dawn with 2 extra discs?
Value for money. Purely and simply. We wanted we gave, if I remember, wait a minute, let me get this right. We had been sent masters of some US radio sessions, which we thought were great, but we felt that as they were, in the form they were, we felt that it would end up being either a fan club only, or the other thing we could do was give it away as a freebie somewhere. And as the Till Dawn was coming out, and we knew that not everybody was going to necessarily want to buy remixes, we thought that those people that did buy the remixes might like to hear the radio sessions, because they were totally the other way. They weren't remixes at all, they were marked just acoustic gigging and all the rest of it, and the radio interviews. And then on top of that, that was what we did on general release, and because the fan club was so important to us, and because we had always tried to give value for money with the fan club, the Michael Kaskuna interview, the Electric Warrior 71 interview, was changing hands for about 25 quid at the time on the Reprise label. So what we did was we thought it was about time that was available to everybody, so we pressed it up and we gave it away free. And I can't believe that people in fact, I don't think it is a criticism, is it? No, it's just asking for an explanation. That's fair enough. Yeah, just wanting to give fans as much value for money as we could.
Okay. Is it true that the masters you had were stored in a bin liner in your garage? If true, why?
They weren't well, there was far too many of them to have been stored in a bin liner. They were in a dry, clean section of the garage for storage, which was a secure lock-up garage. And some of the boxes were in bin liners to protect them, just extra protection. All the tapes that had cuts in the boxes, or they were open one end, we covered. And the others that were in proper boxes were just stacked on the special shelving that we had built, because the damn things weighed a ton.
Can I just pause a moment?